October 31st, here in Seoul, I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Israel's military operation in Gaza. Israeli ground forces are advancing deeper into the region, rescuing the first hostage held by Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his country would not agree to a ceasefire, saying that would be surrendering to Hamas. President Yoon is set to deliver a speech at the National Assembly in the coming hours on the government's budget for next year, where the first ever talks between Yoon and the main opposition leader Lee Jae-myung could take place. Bovine lumpy skin disease has now spread to Gyeongsangnam-do Province, bringing the total number of farms with infections to 67. The government is planning to complete nationwide inoculations of cattle by November 10 to contain the spread. Israeli ground operations are expanding in Gaza, including the rescue of a soldier taken hostage by Hamas. Now, with Israel launching what they call their second stage of the war, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that a ceasefire would be the same as surrendering to Hamas. Lee Jae-myung.
An Israeli soldier who was kidnapped by Hamas during the October 7th attack has been rescued as the Israeli Defense Forces, Special Forces, and the Shin Bet Intelligence Agency conducted a ground operation in Gaza on Sunday night. Private Yuri Megadish is the first soldier rescued by Israel since more than 200 people, including dozens of Israeli soldiers, were taken by Hamas. Megadish was a member of a unit of female soldiers in charge of monitoring the Gaza border via surveillance cameras. The Israeli military says she's in good health and has met with her family. Despite the international community calling for a humanitarian ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will not agree to a ceasefire, as it would be equivalent to surrendering to Hamas and terrorism. During a press conference on Monday, the Prime Minister went on to condemn Hamas for trying to destroy the promise of Israel's future. He added that just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or the September 11th terrorist attack, Israel will continue to fight. Meanwhile, the Israeli military announced on Monday that it had sent additional troops to the Gaza Strip as it strengthened ground operations in the Palestinian enclave. In a statement released by the military, it said that additional troops were deployed as it looks to achieve its war goals. In addition, the military announced that the head of the IDF Southern Command, Major General Yaron Finkelman, went into the Gaza Strip to assess the ground combat situation. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
President Yoon is set to deliver his budget speech for the 2024 fiscal year at the National Assembly in the coming hour. In his speech at 10 a.m., the president will seek lawmakers' cooperation in passing the government's proposed budget worth some 657 trillion won, or some $487 billion as the government looks to tighten spending. Ahead of the speech, President Yoon is expected to meet with the main opposition Democratic Party's dignitaries and Chairman Lee Jae-myung. The meeting, a parliamentary tradition, will be Yoon's first conversation with DP chair and former president rival Lee since he took office. Now, next year's budget is a 2.8% increase to the previous year's, which is the lowest growth rate since 2005. President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Kishida have been recognized by the John F. Kennedy Foundation for their courage in mending bilateral ties and strengthening three-way cooperation with the U.S. to promote regional peace. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
President Yoon and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida pledged more courageous efforts to pursue peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region after they jointly received a prize for their push to bolster trilateral cooperation with the United States. The John F. Kennedy Foundation held a ceremony Sunday, with the South Korean and Japanese leaders awarded as special recipients of the International Profile and Courage Award for working to improve bilateral ties, despite domestic opposition arising from historical issues. In particular, the foundation said Yoon began working towards rapprochement with Japan shortly after his election in March last year, adding that the two leaders have since built up a strong personal relationship with an exchange of visits between Seoul and Tokyo. It said such courage to choose a more hopeful future led to a historic level of trilateral cooperation with the US at their Camp David summit. The August summit produced key documents that set out a new framework for dialogue and coordination on military responses to North Korea's provocations and broader regional security, as well as economic issues and humanitarian projects in the Indo-Pacific. Accepting the honor in a video message, the South Korean leader said he was privileged to be awarded with his dear friend Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, promising even greater efforts to show courage based on utter sacrifice and dedication.
I know that this award is a reminder of my solemn duty, a profound sense of responsibility placed upon the Republic of Korea, the United States, and Japan to promote freedom and prosperity around the world by standing together in solidarity.
Yoon said as an English learner in high school, he was inspired by President Kennedy's values and worldview, which drove his push for innovation and reform, which led to social progress and scientific achievement. He mentioned the former US leader's New Frontier speech in 1960, which outlined his bold vision for the future while describing the many challenges facing America. Also in a video message, Prime Minister Kishida said he would work to open a new era in Korean-Japan relations based on his friendship with and trust of President Yoon, and that with the US, the three Pacific powers would contribute to peace and stability in the region. Previous recipients of the Courage Award include Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky last year, Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush, and former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. 오시영 Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. are taking part in a large-scale joint aerial exercise until this Friday. And watchers say the drills, which are aimed at better preparing the allies for actual combat, may trigger a response from North Korea, including retaliatory measures. Choi Min-jung reports.
Seoul and Washington are currently conducting round-the-clock aerial drills dubbed Vigilant Defense in the skies around the Korean peninsula. The 5-day exercise, which kicked off Monday, involves some 130 South Korean and U.S. aircraft, including Seoul's F-35A fighters, the E-737 airborne early warning and control aircraft, and the KC-330 transport plane, as well as Washington's F-35A and F-35B fighters. The exercise is aimed at enhancing the Allies' combined operational capabilities against North Korea's military provocations.
South Korea and the U.S. Air Force plan to master wartime operation procedures and check operational capabilities.
This is being done through drills which include combat formation, defensive counter-air drills, airborne alert interdiction, and close air support operations. Colonel Kang Geun-shin, the director of the exercise, had previously said the intensive training is similar to actual combat and will allow the Allies to respond to any provocation by the enemy. That being said, there is growing speculation that North Korea may stage missile launches in a show of discontent with the joint drills.
It is highly likely that North Korea will carry out various forms of provocation during this training period to create insecurity on the Korean peninsula.
North Korea, which has previously called such drills rehearsals for invasion, launched missiles during last year's Seoul-Washington joint air exercise. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The time is almost up for North Korea, as it's pledged to launch a military satellite for a third trial within the month of October is now not looking too likely. We turn to Professor Brian Myers for the reasons why the launch may not be happening as planned. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Professor Myers, it's safe to say the launch is not happening, considering it's the last day of October today, right? Because there are no signs of or related activities were spotted anywhere.
Yeah, it does seem unlikely at this point, especially considering that North Korea has said nothing to indicate it's going to launch in the next few hours. The regime does like to carry through on its launch pledges, and it has a pretty good record of doing so. But on the other hand, it's not going to let itself be boxed in by them or risk another failure because it's rushing things too much. So yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing a satellite launch today.
Sure. Let's talk about the second launch attempt back in August. Now, that failed due to a malfunction with the rocket's third stage, which the North claimed was not a big deal. Then what could be the reason there's no third test yet? Is it because the North hasn't fixed that issue yet?
Well, first of all, I'm sure those engineers and technicians are under a lot of pressure because the nuclear program is pretty much central to this regime's legitimacy, and it's had a pretty bad year. So a lot rests on this next launch being successful. So I think everybody, Kim Jong-un included, would probably rather fall behind schedule a bit than risk the much greater embarrassment of another failure. You know, it's possible that although the problem last time has been fixed, everybody wants to make extra sure that everything else is in order this time. And second, you know, this is a country in which the leader manages everything of great importance. And Kim has been pretty busy over the past few months, what with the Russia summit and the supply of munitions to the war in Ukraine. So I think this may be another reason why the satellite launch is falling behind schedule.
Sure. Professor Myers, you said it. The North would be pretty ashamed of the fact that the third launch attempt is not happening, considering the North normally, puts its words into action. It's probably feeling more desperation than shame, right?
Well, you know, I don't want to overestimate the importance of keeping promises like this. I don't think it's all that big a deal with the North Korean public. I think the North Korean man in the street has long since forgotten that pledge. And in any case, there's a personality cult in North Korea, which means that the leader himself is never held personally responsible for anything that goes wrong. So even if there is another launch and it fails, the domestic spin will be that the engineers let Kim Jong-un down. And I think even in Washington, D.C., nobody is now going to start claiming that the North Koreans are not serious about their nuclear program or that they're not going to get the job done at some point.
Right. Then how likely is it that Russia or Russian scientists have actually participated in preparing an upcoming launch attempt following Russia's, promises to help Pyongyang with space technology?
Well, it may be a reason for the delay that we've just been discussing. After all, the North Koreans have already stepped up and supplied the Russians with munitions and weaponry. So Putin may have been keen to reciprocate by dispatching scientists to North Korea, and they may have asked to delay the launch until they can take a look at things. But, I'm doubtful that the Russians trust North Korea enough to want to share really substantive expertise. I mean, you don't share secret high-tech expertise in return for low-tech artillery shells. And anyway, not enough time has passed for such a sharing to have taken place.
Right. In the end, it will be a fair exchange between the two sides. Now, our Choi Min-jung reported earlier, South Korea and the U.S. are conducting a large-scale aerial exercise this week. Professor Myers, that will probably bother North Korea, right?
Yeah, I think it'll bother the North a bit more than usual. I mean, granted, military exercises have been taking place here annually for over half a century, so they are routine to a certain extent. But these are extraordinary times, and by helping the Russian war effort in such a conspicuous way, I think Kim Jong-un has probably angered Washington more than his recent missile launches have done, and he's well aware of this. Plus, when your country has experienced U.S. carpet bombing, as North Korea did during the Korean War, you're always going to be more nervous about, say, stealth fighter jets or any sort of enemy aerial drills than about amphibious exercises or things like that. So some verbal expression of discontent is likely, and I think the missile launch might be timed to coincide with these exercises. But I don't think North Korea is going to want to push its luck too far, considering that Washington already feels provoked by Kim Jong-un's support for Putin.
Sure. The vigilant defense will go on until Friday. Let's keep a close eye on the regime's movement for the week. Thank you, Professor Myers, as always, for your insight and your time as well.
Thank you for having me.
A case of a lumpy skin disease was reported in Changwon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province for the first time on Monday. 29 cattle from the farm have been culled due to the outbreak. Agricultural authorities say after examining 20,000 cattle in 454 farms within a 10-kilometer radius, no other cases have been reported. As of Monday, cases of lumpy skin disease have been reported at 67 locations. The government plans to complete a vaccination of the cattle by November 10th, but says the number of cases will likely rise as it takes around 3 weeks for vaccinated cattle to form antibodies. An additional 2.1 million doses of the vaccine are set to arrive in Korea on Tuesday. South Korea has become a global cultural powerhouse on the back of K-pop and other K-content. And the nation's new culture minister, Yoon says he'll make Korean culture more accessible both at home and abroad. Our culture correspondent Song Yu-jin spoke to him.
It's been a busy 3 weeks for South Korea's new Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Yoon. Since taking office earlier this month, he's been crisscrossing provinces, engaging with industry officials. This is his second term as culture minister, having previously served from 2008 to 2011. Back in the role, Yoo says he will make Korean culture more accessible both domestically and on the global stage. On the domestic front, he's prioritizing the transformation of regions outside Seoul into vibrant cultural hubs. This involves establishing more state-run performing arts companies and what's called the Local 100 project, which spotlights 100 landmarks, cultural assets, and artisans.
We aim to engage with people who are eager to participate in this project, enabling them to immerse themselves in the unique culture, cuisine, and products of each region. This initiative is expected to breathe new life into regions outside the capital.
Globally, Minister Yoo envisions enhancing the competitiveness of Korean content by providing support for content creators to safeguard their intellectual property rights, as well as allocating 1.7 trillion Korean won, or $1.3 billion for content creation next year. When asked about his top priority, his answer was amending the Copyright Act.
The revision should take into account the interests of content creators, producers, streaming services, and other involved stakeholders. I'll constantly engage, discuss, and communicate with these parties.
Based on these, the Culture Ministry will lay out detailed policies for each sector by the end of this year. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
It's been over a year since South Korea launched its digital platform government, which aims for more user-friendly administrative services. Our Shin Ha-young spoke with the head of the Presidential Committee on the body to explore what's been achieved and what still needs to be done.
Enabling people to receive services tailored to their needs by integrating information and data across the private and public sectors. This is what the Yoon administration has been focusing on through the Digital Platform Government Initiative, or DPG. First launched in September last year, a presidential committee on the digital platform government spent its first year creating an action plan.
The claiming process for actual medical expenses insurance will be simplified. Policyholders had to visit hospitals to obtain related documents and submit them to the insurance company. Similarly, for export companies, the process of applying for trade financing has been simplified by enabling electronic submission of documents from the Korea Customs Service to financial institutions.
These efforts have extended abroad. During President Yoon's state visit to the Middle East last week, South Korean tech giant Naver struck a deal with the Saudi Arabian government to create a digital twin platform, a virtual geospatial model of the real world for urban planning and management in 5 Saudi cities.
Establishing and disseminating a digital twin is part of the digital platform government's plan. The latest deal is the outcome of cooperation between the government and a private company. It is meaningful as it is the first export case of the digital platform government.
In terms of digital infrastructure, Ko says South Korea is a global powerhouse. But he thinks the country falls short in utilizing digital technology, which is the reason for creating the world's first use case of hyperscale AI across government departments.
We are creating a hyperscale AI for the government using refined data and reinforcement learning from human feedback, specifically from public officials. This can be used for data analysis and policy making and addressing social welfare issues. It can be also used to prevent accidents like the Itaewon tragedy by analyzing traffic data to proactively identify potential risks in densely populated areas.
Last September, the South Korean government published what it calls the Digital Bill of Rights. Ko says that the DPG and the Digital Bill of Rights are inseparable.
The digital platform government plans to demonstrate the Digital Bill of Rights, focusing on improving people's welfare and rights. To alleviate concerns about misusing personal information, we'll establish a system that enables citizens to transparently verify how and where their data is shared and utilized within the government.
Under the theme of government innovation with the digital platform government, there will be an exhibition in November showcasing the achievements of the DPG and demonstrating how it'll shape the future of the government. 신하영, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Hong Kong, where 4 former student leaders were sentenced to 2 years in prison on Monday for charges of inciting violence through their praise of a man who stabbed a police officer. The 4, Kin Sun Chung, Charles Kwok, Chris Todorovsky, and Anthony Yoon, are being held responsible for passing a motion in a students' union council that expressed deep sadness and appreciated the sacrifice of Leung Kin Fai, a man who took his own life on July 1, 2021, after stabbing a police officer. They were originally charged with advocating terrorism under Beijing's national security law imposed on Hong Kong following the 2019 pro-democracy protests. This charge was dropped after they pleaded guilty last month to the current charge of incitement to wound with intent. Beijing's security law has prosecuted and silenced most activists in Hong Kong who were involved in the pro-democracy protests. The Chinese government says the law brought stability to the city after the period of unrest. Now moving over to Europe, where Spanish authorities announced Monday the seizure of some 720 kilos of cocaine hidden among scrap metal in a truck. Police said the drugs arrived in the southern port city of Malaga from Costa Rica at the end of September. The cocaine was hidden in a safe buried under piles of metal scraps in the truck's container. Police had to use drills and tweezers in order to uncover the illegal cargo. Spanish authorities said the 8 people were arrested across Andalusia region in connection with the find. The bus is the latest in a series of operations undertaken by Spanish police, adding to the 9.5 tons of cocaine found in containers of bananas from Ecuador in August. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, announced on Monday that its users in Europe will be offered the option to pay and subscribe to ad-free versions of the social media platforms. It is giving this option as a means to comply with the EU's strict data privacy rules. Following an EU court ruling in July to uphold the decision by German antitrust regulators that Meta's data harvesting methods are abusive, the firm had to come up with alternatives to meet Europe's data privacy standards. Starting in November this year, users of the app on desktop browsers can pay around €10, whilst mobile phone application users will pay around €13 for the advertisement-free subscription. The monthly plan is available for all users in the EU, European Economic Area and Switzerland. Argentinian football legend Lionel Messi has won the men's Ballon d'Or for the 8th time. In the evening ceremony held in Paris on Monday, the 36-year-old former Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain star, who now plays for Inter Miami, was once again recognized for his contribution to Argentina's victory at the Qatar World Cup last year. He has won the most Ballon d'Or awards in history, 3 more than Cristiano Ronaldo. For Women's Award, the Ballon d'Or Féminine, the 25-year-old Spain and Barcelona midfielder Aitana Bonmati won it for the first time. Bonmati was recognized for her success in a club and country level, including a Women's World Cup win this summer. Meanwhile, South Korean defender Kim Min-jae came 22nd in the men's Ballon d'Or final rankings.
Good morning. West Coast and inland areas are covered with thick fog this morning. Visibility has lowered down to just 100 meters in some parts. So commuters had to beware of low visibility amid difficult driving conditions. In fact, the capital area, Gyeongsangnam-do and Ulsan will have high level of dust at times today, but thankfully it will not be a full-blown dust storm. As for the temperatures, it's the last day of October, but it feels more like the earlier part of the month. And the skies will get brighter as the day goes on, so it's a good day for an autumn stroll or an impromptu outing in most places. Afternoon highs will be similar to yesterday, hovering in the low 20s in most places. Seoul topping out at 21 degrees, Gyeongju at 25 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Then frequent rain in the forecast in central parts of the country for the rest of the week, with temperatures staying way above the norms. Then a November chill awaits us next week, so enjoy the warmth while you can. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Welcome. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라 감당할 수 있겠니?
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's October 31st here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Choi Ji-hee.
Good morning, Yoon.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Nice to see the baby right there.
Aww.
Yes, yes. We'll talk about that later.
All right. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. A recent health survey conducted by the KDCA found out that the number of females who drink heavily is increasing these days. Over the past 10 years, the percentage of heavy drinkers among men came down from 25.1% to 23.6%. But for women, the proportion went up from 7.9% to 8.9% in the year 2021. The KDCA defines heavy drinkers as those who drink more than 2 times per week, or men who drink at least 7 shots or glasses of hard liquor. For women, that's more than 5. Now, moving on to our second story. Ever since we've detected the first case of lumpy skin disease a few weeks back, 67 farms nationwide had culled more than 4,300 of their cows. And lumpy skin disease doesn't affect humans, but it's highly infectious among cattle and buffalo and leads to skin lesions or even death. Because it's so infectious, some farms have decided to just kill off their livestock. To that, animal rights groups have hit the streets demanding for better protection for livestock. They've also asked officials to speed up their vaccination campaign. And moving on, a new bill to consider removing the chance of parole for criminals sentenced to life imprisonment has been passed by the cabinet on Monday. The Ministry of Justice said they have advocated such an amendment to the criminal law and are now waiting for lawmakers to officially pass this. Now, under the current law, felons originally sentenced to life can be granted parole after 20 years. But officials deem stronger measures are needed to prevent severe crimes from happening and to dampen the public's fear over released criminals for reoffending. Now, based on what we just found out right now, what do you think about this news story, Walter?
I'm sure it's very hard to take me serious right now, but I have studied this area of criminology, and I know that the extending the parole is not going to decrease the recidivism, to be honest with you, because they're still going to carry out the crime. So I don't think this is a bill that needs to be passed straight away. It is a step in the right direction. However, I would say there are more important things. For example, what's been happening recently with the attacks in Seoul and also Busan, those areas need to be addressed very quickly, and the punishments are the problems at the moment. So I don't think this is as important as fixing the punishments first.
So you don't think that it would necessarily prevent crimes or lower the rates of recidivism?
I believe so. I believe it won't, no.
But I think if I play devil's advocate here, some people are very assured in one way that the officials are taking this measure because they don't want to see hardcore criminals come out from prison. For instance, you mentioned before during the rehearsal, like sex offenders like Cho Do-sun coming out and stuff like that. So I do understand that there's an angle like that. What do you think?
Well, due to the recent rise in violent crimes in the country, so there's been a call from the public to reinstate the death penalty in the country because we haven't been executing it for years now. However, since there's a growing trend globally to actually abolish any death penalty in any country, I believe that the other better alternative would be to imprison people, life sentence them, but have no possibility of parole. I think I always say this, but there should be a balance between punitive and preventive measures. However, a strong enough penalty is necessary to really deter offenders so that it reduces recidivism as well as to cause a sense of fear among potential criminals.
So you're on the side that this is actually taking a hardline measure to prevent crimes. Right. All right, valid points there. And that was our news feed for this Tuesday. Let's head on into our discussion topic of the day. From our generation, traditional gender roles have been breaking down. We've seen a great shift in the way we perceive which gender should do what, especially at home. And to find out more about what we'll be discussing today, take a listen to what my AI voice secretary has to say.
Who should stay at home after marriage? The wife? The husband? Does it matter? Well, it doesn't seem to matter among the younger generation in Korea. Survey company Hankook Research asked those born from the years 2001 to 2004 whether they thought a specific gender should focus on house chores and taking care of a child after marriage. Only 1 out of 6 men said this type of role should be dominantly given to women. There were even fewer women who thought like that. Only 1 out of 10 thought so.
Traditional gender roles, that definitely doesn't click with our generation. And how can we back this statement up, Ji-hee?
Well, in the past, traditional gender roles in Korea, they used to be clearly defined where men were considered the main breadwinners and women were really expected to stay at home to mainly deal with household chores and to take care of the children. However, according to a recent survey which was conducted by Statistics Korea, this cultural norm is changing. Now, let's take a look at the screen for the details. So according to recent statistics, as of January 2023, the number of men who were not working due to childcare reached a record high of 17,000. Now, this is a whopping 20% increase from the previous year. However, this number does not reflect the nearly 40,000 fathers and paternity leave, which means that the actual figure could be even higher. And also, the number of men who were inactive due to homemaking hit a 20-year high with a total of 215,000 men citing this reason. So we really are, through the numbers, we can say that cultural norms are changing.
Right, because in the past, I think it was traditional or stereotypical to think that men would go out and work while they're the breadwinners. Women, on the other hand, would stay home and do house chores. But as we're seeing with Walter, with the baby right on his side, you're the only parent here on the News Gen team. So could you agree with the stat that Ji-hee showed us? Are we seeing more stay-at-home dads and stay-at-home husbands here in Korea?
Well, first, meet Angelina Jolie. The reason why I call her Angelina Jolie is because my last name is Lee. So if you put 2 and 2 together, then...
Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie. So yes, nice to meet you all. But yes, I am a father. Not to this one really, but to a real one. And yes, I can relate. So I'm a freelancer, and one of the benefits of being a freelancer is being able to take on certain projects that may or may not suit my schedule, for example. And though I don't know anyone personally around me who is doing the same, I want to be a part of this movement as well, where it's men are taking more responsibility at home and change the stereotypes of women staying at home and men going out, because sometimes, you know, men aren't just suited to go out and women really want to progress in their career. So I work up to 40 to 50 hours per day. Per week, should I say, and still manage to do little bits that help around the house. Like, in fact, I know this will be a little bit controversial, but I'll be like probably abused in the comments, but I actually wish I was a bad parent because they get more rest than good parents. But yes, yeah, I'd love to see changes in this area.
I mean, by the way, you're just hugging Angelina.
Yeah.
Angelina, right?
Angelina Joel.
Oh, Angelina Joel. I can tell you are a good dad.
Yes,
and I think you mentioned a very good point. Thank you for bringing Angelina in the studio.
Yeah,
Angelina
it wasn't
Joel.
easy.
Yeah. Because she's still an infant.
Yeah, she's still an infant. Maybe shouldn't be outside.
But all jokes aside, I think this type of discussion is quite prevalent among our generation because, as I mentioned before in the VCR, we are a generation where we want to break down all these gender stereotypes. That's why I would like to find where you guys stand on this issue, starting with you, Tihi. Would you be okay if your husband asks if he can stay at home and do all the house chores or take care of the baby and asks you to be the sole breadwinner?
Well, I wouldn't just be okay. I wouldn't mind at all. And I would encourage my future husband if he wanted to take care of all the household chores and even cooking and taking care of the baby as well. I'd be happy to let him take on the responsibility if it's what he seems like he's better at it. If he thinks he enjoys it more, a lot more than me, and if he's able to do all the house chores and even taking care of the baby better than me, I would support him. However, there's still social stigma and prejudice, especially in our country, because we have a strong Confucianism foundation where we think that men should be the main breadwinners. It's a tradition, really. So some people may see house husbands as people who are incompetent or irresponsible of their family. However, if my husband-to-be can really withstand this prejudice and be proud of what he's doing, I would support him wholeheartedly.
100%. I completely agree with you there because, as you mentioned, we are in a society where Confucian roots are still here, and also the concept of patriarchy, that is still prevailing, which is why a lot of people, especially men, don't feel too confident, I believe, in the sense that they're confidently saying that they're stay-at-home dads. But what are your thoughts on this, Walter? I know at the moment you're dividing the work with your wife, but would you be okay if your wife asked you to be a stay-at-home husband and dad?
Actually, this is something that my wife and I have been talking about because she goes back to work, I think in February next year. Anyway, and I have a lot of jobs that, require me to work at home. And so when I'm working at home, I could take the kid to daycare. I could do my best to clean the house. And to be honest with you, I'm the better cook. And if she's watching, you know that. But yes, in reality, once she goes back to work, she's actually earning like so much more than me, even though I have like a lot of jobs going on. So, so the biggest thing for us, for our daughter, not this one, is to have a big influence on her. And in Korea, a lot of grandparents actually take care of their children. And though I love my grandparents, oh, not my grandparents, my parents-in-law, I want to be the bigger influence on my baby. And that means I need to stay home and be with her. So this, even though Jihi mentioned the stigma that's behind it in Korea, I do want to help change that because I think some people are just suited to, look after children, clean the house and cook.
And I think you guys mentioned both a very important point. It's that whoever wants to do it should do it. Like, it no longer should be restrained to which gender you fall into. It should be if you're better at the job, whether that be house chores. And mind you, we all know that house chores is actually the most arduous thing to do.
Right, but you never get paid for it.
You never get paid for it. And even taking care of the baby, you could relate to that.
Yes, you definitely don't get paid for it.
Exactly, but it all comes down to how you communicate with your partner at the end of the day, whether you want to be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad. Now, let's find out how our global viewers think about today's discussion topic. So here's what 3 of them had to say on our topic of the day. Take a look at the screen to find out. Let's start with Defeat. He said, "My dad is a retired commander. It's a good thing because he stays at home and helps taking care of my younger brother when I'm living away with my husband." Tasmia said, "I think stay-at-home dads are awesome because there are many children who just want to spend time with their dads more than their moms." Little Bear said, "There are more than there was when I was a kid. I think it's good to have either parent stay at home. You can raise them on your values and raise them right, not a stranger." And we're now going to include a millennial who's actually a stay-at-home husband in our talks. Stay in tune for this live interview. We're now going to talk to a fellow millennial stay-at-home dad. It's actually our panel now, Song's husband, Danny Chung. Now, he'll be speaking on behalf of other millennial stay-at-home husbands here in Korea. Welcome, Danny.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right, Danny, pleasure to have you here. I'll ask you the first question. When and why did you decide to become a stay-at-home husband?
Well, it happened this year, May of this year. I quit my day job, and the primary reason was it gave me a chance to have a last go at pursuing my dream as a musician.
That's really amazing. So you decided to talk it out with your wife Nell, our fellow panel, to decide to stay at home, right?
Yeah, well, the big, and that too, and the big thing was my wife landed like many jobs. Like Walter was saying, how he has a lot of jobs. She landed a lot of jobs this year. And so I was kind of getting burnt out from the job I was doing. And so we agreed, okay, how about, for the rest of this year, I'll take care of more of the house chores while I can, have the, privilege and time to focus fully on music while she provides, most of the income.
Well, you seem like a lucky man, really. But, yeah,
I'm very lucky this year.
I mean, it's not been long because you said it was only since May, right? So it's only been half a year. What do you think are the pros or cons of staying at home?
Probably the biggest one is time and energy. I have all the energy to focus on one thing, which is for me, is to release an album. And another thing is because my studio where I work on music is literally like a minute from our house. I can just go there whenever I want. I can go back home to help clean or prepare the meal when she comes back from work or that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Niall talks about you all the time. Mostly good things, but, she complains every so often. But how do you think society has perceived stay-at-home, like, husbands or dads like yourself before and also now?
Yeah, as you guys mentioned before, obviously in the past it was viewed more in a negative light just because the traditional role of a husband was to be the provider or the breadwinner. But I'd say, these days, especially because of COVID and also technology and the internet, there are so many, different job opportunities and different ways to make money that doesn't require you to actually go to a company or work full-time as a, employee. You can be self-employed at home or take on, a whole bunch of random jobs that the internet provides that can all be done, at home on your computer. And so, I'd say, because of that, I feel like married couples, maybe not just full-on stay-at-home dads, but both. I feel like we're in an age where both couples can work like part-time and still be present at home, for similar periods of time.
Exactly, I completely agree. And what's really respectable about your relationship, I mean, we talk about it amongst ourselves, is that you guys seem to have very healthy communication. And I think that's the key in order for whether it be double income families or like stay-at-home dads or even stay-at-home moms to stay at home. But I do think that there is a societal problem, which is there are still that stigma behind which gender should do what, specifically at the house. And do you agree that there is some type of social stigma? And what do you think needs to be done to break down these gender stereotypes?
Of course, yeah, especially people who grow up traditionally, the woman is to take care of the home and the man is to go out and work. But, we define man's role as being the provider a lot. But I realize, being a provider doesn't just mean, providing financially. There's so many other ways, a man or anyone can provide for a family, whether it be emotionally or as one of the comments mentioned, just being there physically for either your wife or if you have children. I mean, I don't have children yet, so that's not the case yet. But I heard, a lot of, because men are usually kind of obsessed with their work, and sometimes you work so much that you're never home. The children can, it can badly affect children who don't have much time to spend with their dad. And so, I think being able to provide, provide your presence.
Yeah.
Is also a big thing. So if we can maybe change our the way we think about the word provider, maybe it can free some men up to not fully be obsessed or not fully be consumed by having to provide only financially.
Not be limited to the so-called gender stereotypes. Danny, it was a pleasure talking to you today, and it's always happy to see News Gen family on our show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, now I would like to take our last part of the discussion to talk about how we should do or what we should do to better break down gender stereotypes and to ensure a better social atmosphere for men to become stay-at-home husbands or dads. So what are your thoughts on that, Chihi?
Well, I think we should first of all be more accepting of fathers who take paternity leaves, because I heard that men who take paternity leaves, there is still unspoken pressure within the corporate environment. So we should really even be accepting and encourage them a lot more, and also perhaps regulate and incentivize paternity leaves as well, and also make better use of modern media as well, and really showcase a lot more husbands like Walter to really make it a norm and normalize it as a social norm for fathers to stay home and take care of their children.
I agree. Social infrastructure is key in order for that to happen. What do you think, Walter?
Yeah, I think that this social stigma is quite annoying. To be honest with you, even if someone were to, look down on me, I wouldn't care, to be honest with you, because I have a role to do with my family, and if it means taking care of them, doing less work, then so be it. And to be honest with you, we shouldn't also forget about there are some families out there that who like the traditional roles as well, where the father goes out and the mother stays home. There are still tons of people like that, but it shouldn't be looked at when it's the opposite example, when a father stays home and the woman goes out. That's the biggest problem here. But, I do want to say that it's not easy to be a father, and that, it takes a lot of time. And I know that we work, and when we go home, we want to rest. But remember, taking care of a baby is also a full-time job, and you need to help out as much as you can if you are a father or a person also looking after the baby.
Yeah, it shouldn't be just stick down to a gender. Just because you're a woman, you have to take care of the child. I don't think that no longer sticks with our generation, because our generation is about accepting all these different open values and, most importantly, widening our perspectives. And in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Chiji.
Thank you.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid,